Hey everybody, it's Chaotic Chris, and what's up? Welcome. This is a video I'm making on a whim. I'm a little late to the party, but I wanted to speak on JJ Akutami's last words and give just, I guess, my personal final take on Jujutsu Kaisen. After they finished the manga, they left a message to us viewers, and I had some thoughts on it. So keep in mind when watching this, these are just my personal grievances. You don't have to agree. No need for an argument or anything. I'm just talking my shit. That's it. This is just how I think. So here are the tweets right here. I'm going to put them up like one after the other. Feel free to pause the video if you want to read it yourself and then continue on. But I don't know, personally, I understand Akutami's sentiments, but nonetheless, I think that trying to people please as a mangaka, especially with one as conflicting at Jujutsu Kaisen, that was just a recipe for disaster, and I just don't think I was smart. But once again, I understand the sentiment. I understand he wanted to be a good person, but it's just hard to do that when writing a manga like Jujutsu Kaisen. Like that's like trying to be a good person writing Attack on Titan. You know what I'm saying? Like, you really gotta have tougher skin than that. You know what I mean? Like, it's just gonna happen. But at the same time, though, I don't know. I find it weird that such a kind-hearted person who was writing such a dark fantasy manga, you know. But nonetheless, despite the struggles, and I understand being a mangaka is fucking hard, but despite all that, I just cannot look past some of the, as Akutami called it, the absent-mindedness thing. We've seen things like this in other anime, like Naruto, for example. The editors were practically rushing Kishimoto to end it, which is why the ending was kinda lackluster, not gonna lie. I could go on another video explaining that, not gonna lie. But Kishimoto being rushed led to like some stupid things, like for example, in Ass Pull, where Madara was able to use the short-range Kamui with Kakashi's version of the Mangekyo, which was the long-distance one that he used to take out Deidara's arm. Or like out of the nowhere, Naruto and Sasuke reincarnating as gods. And I mean, some people are like, yeah, that stuff was foreshadowed a long time ago. And I mean, don't worry, I believe some of that stuff was foreshadowed, but at the same, like, the Otsutsuki thing, there's a chance that was always a thing, because if you know, like, in the beginning of Naruto, like, I think when they were a child, they spoke of the six paths. So I believe that was kind of a thing. But the whole thing being reincarnated as gods, it's kind of stupid, especially considering, like, at some point, Naruto was all about defying your destiny, and all of a sudden, now they're just living out someone else's destiny, like a fate that was brought onto them. So it was kind of counterintuitive to the original message of the show. And that's, once again, the ending was a little lackluster. But nonetheless, it wrapped things up nicely, you know what I'm saying? And ultimately, we can look past some of these things in not just Naruto, but other animes as well. You know, some things can be given grace. But there are some things in JJK that, like, it can be given some grace, but other things can't be overlooked. For example, Kenjaku's plan was totally thrown away. He mentions the creation of the merger curse, which I'm sure excited many people, myself included, but he never got to go through with it. Now, that makes sense. Yuta killed him, and he mentioned something about his will being passed on. It was the way it was framed. It was as though his goals would reappear in the final fight between Sukuna and the rest of the sorcerers, but he just got decapitated and went out. And it was almost like, it wasn't even a cliffhanger. It was like, it was less of a cliffhanger, more of like falling, but never hitting the bottom. Like, I'm sure everybody, I'm not going to say everybody, but I cannot be the only one who low-key thought that Kenjaku was the main villain of the series. Kind of, almost like how Zetsu was the main villain of Naruto, when everybody thought it was Madara, but in the end it was Zetsu conducting everything. Like, that's what I wanted it to be like with JJK. Something cool, you know, like the merger curse being somehow related to Mahito. Like, that would have been something. And speaking of Mahito, and not gonna lie, I think he was unfulfilled, and there's a little veering from the point, and once again, totally opinionated, but I don't think he should have died the way he did. Like, they kept hyping him up as being the complete opposite of Yuji, you know, the curse of death. Yuji's arch nemesis and all that. He was supposed to be the literal manifestation of all of humanity's negative emotions. Not just like cursed energy, but like literally just their hatred for each other. And I feel like we should have seen more of him. We should have seen more of his ability. You know what I'm saying? Like, especially the stitches on him. Like, I don't know. I had a fun theory that I think I'm going to make another video on. But there is something with those stages and the nature of his technique. I'm just going on a tangent right now. But overall, I think Mahito was a great villain. He was honestly one of my favorite villains. Not as in, like, I like him. Not like the way you favor someone like Madara, for example, where it's like, oh, Madara is such a good villain. He wanted peace. And it's not like you actually like the character for their personality. That's not what I feel about Mahito. The reason why I liked Mahito so much as a villain, because he was a true villain. Like, truly a menace. Like, he was born solely for the purpose of wreaking havoc. Like, just a real villain. And I'm not gonna lie, a part of me admired that about Jujutsu Kaisen. Like, how, because lots of times the animes, they tend to forget the idea that not everything is about a greater cause or for humanity or this and that. Some guys just want to see the world burn. And I'm happy that JJK made a villain like that. And, you know, they made several villains like that. Kind of like, Kenjaku. I mean, you could have compared Sukuna to that level, but at the end, he kind of had his whole... Redemption would be a stretch, but, you know, the whole... It basically said he was basically just hurt. You know, it was for vengeance and all that. And I'm like, okay, that's cool, but, you know, it's not what we wanted. You know what I mean? I'm just saying, Mahito was something... I think he went out a little prematurely, and he played his role very well. And overall... Yeah, it was just the BS way for him to go out. And where he briefly spoke to Sukuna at the end too, like, they just made him seem like a wuss, and I didn't like that. Especially the way he went out, like, crying like a fucking child, running away from Yuji, who wasn't even that strong. Like, it was just like, he had his final fight, he got to run his ones, okay, fine, but I don't know, it seemed like a lame way to go out. Especially, once again, considering he's supposed to be the manifestation of human hatred. It just... I think he could have lived up to Sukuna's name, but they did him dirty. But back to the main thing.
Okay, so while I was editing, it just dawned upon me another grievance that I had. I wanted to know more about Yuji's mother. We really didn't get much. I mean, the father wasn't all too important. I mean, we kind of got what we needed from him. It was the idea that he was the reincarnation of Sukuna's brother. Not much importance, but that. Maybe we could have gotten something on, like, maybe if the grandpa knew something, since he seemed to be pretty knowledgeable, I guess. He was able to suspect something was wrong with, Kaori Itadori, which was Kenjaku, but that's the thing. Like, what more was there to Kaori? The gravity ability. How was she already tied to the Jujutsu world, or was it just an awakened ability? Why didn't Yuji get the gravity-based ability when he awakened himself? And more importantly, how did Kenjaku lose to Yuta with the gravity ability? Like, don't get me wrong, Yuta Okosu is strong. He's not strong enough to resist one of nature's most powerful forces. You know, like, this, once again, it was Kenjaku using this gravity-based ability that allowed him to survive a black hole. With all due respect, he should not have lost to Yuta. Not that easily. Like, Yuta literally ran up on him. That was... no,
Another point that I have is that Kashimo shouldn't have died. I'm not going to spend too much time on this, or at least I'm going to try not to, because it seems self-explanatory, but to put it in a nutshell, he had the ability to control any and all electric phenomena. There is literally no way that he should have failed to defeat Sukuna. Now, I know that some people will say Kashimo didn't lose because he was weak, but because he was ignorant, which I don't think is true. He had to have knowledge on the matter of electrokinesis. I mean, he was able to use X-rays, electromagnetic wavelengths to generate shockwaves from his mouth. He knew how to extract chemical feedback from steel and used it against Hakiri, even storing charges on different parts of the area they were fighting in, and he knew how to generate steam blasts. Now, that being said, I don't think the steam blast one was that difficult, but it was more so that, once again, even Hakiri stated this, because his cursed energy was, the texture of his cursed energy was made out of electricity, you'd think that he would have short-circuited. Instead, he knew how to mediate it in a way that it wouldn't short-circuit him completely, but instead he could use it to his advantage. I mean, for fuck's sake, he was even able to take advantage of electrolysis and make seawater poisonous, which is done by chemically separating sodium chloride into sodium and chlorine being poisonous, which is how he got the likes of Hakiri. The fact of the matter is, there's no way that he just didn't know or he was ignorant. Like, I get he existed a long time ago, but either way, I'm pretty sure the Gojo clan existed probably longer than Kashimo did, and they had an understanding of space-time manipulation. They had to. That is literally the basis of their technique. Taking that along with the other feats I described, there's no way Kashimo couldn't have at least generated maybe like an electromagnetic force field, like Susan Storms or something. And I mean, even with the world-cutting slash, electromagnetic waves can curve space-time because they carry energy, and it is energy that warps the fabric of space-time. If you want more on that, I suggest looking up Einstein's general relativity theory. It basically goes over all of that. Now, I'm not saying that he could have been on Gojo's level of space-time manipulation, but I'm not even saying it would have made that much of a difference in the fight between him and Sukuna. But I'm just trying to make the point that, like, he should have been able to at least pull off some Magneto-level feats. Especially with his level of cursed energy supply. Like, his entire body turned into pure cursed energy. So this shouldn't have been an issue. But, like I said, I'm talking too much. Kashimo, he went out sad, and he should not have. They were hyping him up for so long, talking about I'm not going to use my ability because I'm waiting to use it on Sukuna. And it's just like, bro, that was such a letdown. Like, the anticipation was overwhelmingly underwhelming. I also think they provided a poor explanation of the fingers, or more so like their bigger purpose. Like, yes, we know the main things. They help Sukuna reincarnate curses. It helps Sukuna to reincarnate. Curses can eat them for power and blah, 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 all that stuff. But some of his explanations didn't make sense. Like, I didn't understand its relevance in the fight with Sukuna. Like, I understood that Nobara used it. Okay, fine. But how did it get there in the first place? Like, that's what I didn't understand. Like, okay, they cut off Yuji's fingers, but Yuji's fingers aren't Sukuna's fingers. I know Sukuna's fingers are inside of Yuji. I don't understand how, like, cutting off Yuji's finger allowed him to make Sukuna's finger. That I don't know. That just didn't make sense to me. So maybe someone can explain that for me in the comments. Another thing is that Yuji's domain expansion was a huge letdown, and it was honestly hard to tell what his purpose was at first. I did more research, and basically it's just Sukuna's ability, but instead it renders the soul rather than the physical form. And because the shape of the body is determined by the shape of the soul, it is it's really impactful. It does a lot of damage to you, but two, it's also really hard to heal. But it seemed very vague at first, and there wasn't much of a point to the conversation he had with Sukuna. It was literally what he said, like, towards the end where he was just like, I get it, kid, I just don't give a fuck, you know? It was like, we all understand what Yuji's saying, but ultimately it evoked no emotion. Like, when I read that dialogue, I could not have cared less about anything that was coming out of Yuji's mouth. I was just like, yo, just get to the fight. Like, what is your domain? You know what I'm saying? It just seemed totally pointless. And I just don't understand why an entire chapter was needed to go over that. Especially for Sukuna to literally say, I don't give a fuck. Like, they went through an entire chapter of BS just for Sukuna to be like, no, not even Sukuna. In the end, Yuji, he was the one. He was just like, yo, give me back Fushiguro, I'm gonna beat your ass. And Sukuna was just like, run my fade. And that was it. So what did we need all that for? Like, was it supposed to be like some uncle-nephew moment or something? I don't know. I just didn't like it. It was... Honestly, the potential of that domain was, I don't want to say infinite, but there's so much it could have been. It could have been based on the cursed wound thing. It could have been like the opposite of Malevolent Shrine, anything. That was just a waste. And like, in a real fight, outside of Sukuna, I mean, there'd be no point. Like, it was lackluster. Like, okay, fine. For Sukuna, he wanted to take him on a trip of his life and show him the value, the meaning of things. It's like, okay, how would that help him against someone else? It didn't even help him against Sukuna. It just made a point. Okay, but against anyone else, like, I get it. A domain is supposed to be a window to one's soul, but usually they have some kind of, like, environmental effect. Like Jogo, it's so hot in there that you can literally set ablaze just from being in the domain. Gojo's, I think that speaks for itself, how Unlimited Void works. Dagon, you know, you're at the beach, the water is interactive, fish come out. Like, you know, there's usually something. Yuji's is just like, I don't know. I mean, he kicked dirt at Sukuna once, but that was it. Another thing that annoyed me was Hakuri versus Urame. That kind of speaks for itself. It was just off-screen BS, and we all wanted to see Urame fight somewhere, let's be real. And, like, I understand not everything is supposed to be perfect, but in all honesty, Jujutsu Kaisen, to me, it was, and that's why it hurt so much. It was one of the first anime I'd seen in such a long time that hooked me the way it did. And it was truly the end that was shit to me. Like, I think it's funny because it's a total contrast from how I felt with My Hero Academia. I remember first being introduced to it by a former friend of mine, and I thought it was awesome, but it slowly regressed and became almost less than mediocre in substance. In my opinion, its ending saved it, though. I think it honestly deserves a solid 7 or 7.5. because of the ending. One of the reasons why its ending saved it, in my opinion, is because it tied most loose ends, at least the ones that people cared about. I mean, sure, Deku didn't become #1 hero, and yeah, we were basically lied to, but at least we know that. We got closure. You know what I'm saying? Like, the ending, it finished it off. It was acceptable. It was plausible. You know, don't get me wrong, there are some things, like, for example, My Hero Academia, the quirk singularity theory, that was never solved. As a matter of fact, one can even say that My Hero Academia verse is doomed because of quirk singularity, but, I mean, I'm not gonna say it wasn't a big deal, but it's just like, to end off at least Izuku Midoriya's story, I guess quirk singularity, it's not that deep, at least in his timeline, you know what I'm saying? Like, maybe his future grandchildren have to worry about it, but you know what I'm saying? But for the story of My Hero, it seems like it got wrapped up, and you know, they got vigilantes, they might even do something else with it, so maybe we'll get something more on that quirk singularity thing. But Jujutsu Kaisen, it just left us with a bunch of questions. It's like Akutami basically made One Piece, but didn't answer the questions or let the story run long enough to do so. It's like Oda not explaining to us what the will of D is before finishing off the One Piece series. And other things weren't necessarily unanswered questions, but once again, wasted potential. Like, for example, the 10 Shadows technique and how it could have been used more in regards to like its background and the cursed witch known as Takayasha Hime, or at least in like the legend of the Gashadokiro, which is also part of Takayasha Hime's story, or maybe its relation to the 10 Regalia or something, because those were the symbols on top of the Cursed Spirit's 10 Shadows, you know what I mean? Or we could have gotten more on the other characters, like, I forgot the girl's name, but she was the one who can literally bend space, or, not Yuji Itadori, Ryu Ishigori, I think that was his name. He was my favorite character. I loved his curse technique. We should have gotten more of him, and I'm going to make a video on him, because I know lots of people, there's like this debate between whether Ryu Ishigori or the Space-Time Girl could, like, who would win in a fight. 100% it was Ryu Ishigori, and I'm going to make a video on that, just as I'm going to make a video on Sukuna versus Gojo, and why Sukuna really did win that fight. Tell me if y'all want to see that. I got some Jujutsu Kaisen videos coming up, so tell me what y'all want to see first. Sukuna versus Gojo, and I'm talking like, we already know how that fight went out, but the video is going to be basically me explaining why Sukuna rightfully won that, and more than likely why Gojo would have never won in the first place. That, or Ishigori versus, what is her name? Uro, I think that's her name. Uro, yeah. Uro versus Ryu. Tell me which fight y'all want to see, and I'm going to go over that. But yeah, I don't know. I understand some fans take it too far. Like, fans were really dragging it, especially once again with the Gojo versus Sukuna fight. In my opinion, Gojo lost fair and square, and once again, I intend to prove that. But the thing is, like, I also kind of blame Akutami for it, because he was doing too much glazing to a point where even he himself had an issue with it, and that's what made it hard to take him out. But I don't know. Nonetheless, critique is part of the whole thing, and eventually emotions get heavily invested, and it carries sentimental value, you know what I'm saying, and people can end up getting hurt. That said, I think Jujutsu Kaisen was a wonderful series, and made a huge impact on so many people, myself included. And I understand Akutami's frustration, but I think they should give themselves more credit. Honestly, I give it like an 8.5 out of 10. Jujutsu Kaisen was a wonderful series. Tell me what y'all think of this. This is just my take. Just once again, some loose ends I thought should have been tied, and I guess my point of frustration and disappointment. But overall, I think it was an awesome manga. Let me know what y'all think. Alright, anyway, y'all know what it is. It's Chaotic Chris. Thank you guys for watching. I'll see y'all in the next one. Peace.